Hi friends, I hope everyone's doing well. I've been inspired lately by a dark muted color palette that I want to continue down that path, but with a twist. For this collage session, I'll be adding bright colors as small accents. It'll be a balancing act to keep the dark feel of the collages. We'll see how it goes. I brought out the same art journal that I've been using in my last few videos. It's 6 inches by 9.5 inches with blank 60-pound paper for the signatures. I'll go over supplies in each collage section, so let's get started. I pulled papers in burgundy, blue, and pink for this collage. I want to mention that when I said these collages will have bright accent colors, I didn't mean fluorescent colors, more like clean colors that don't have any black or gray or other paints mixed with it. I used Blick's matte acrylic paint and pink medium to create this pink paper. Since I avoid collaging to the gutter of a journal, I like to mark a line a 1/4 inch from it as a guideline. If I collage right to the gutter, the papers may bend or wrinkle. I'll do this step for all the collages. I'm keeping the supplies simple, scissors and a glue stick, and that's it. I won't be using paint for any of the collages in this video, only painted paper. This first collage will be an all-over composition. This monoprinted circle paper was my second choice for a collage in my last video. I love the colors and the depth in it. It'll be the main element of this collage. I hesitate to call it a focal point since this collage will have an all-over composition. I've been inspired by tearing collage paper, so I'll be using this technique for all the collages. I'll be gluing some of the papers as I cut, or rather tear them, and leaving some unglued until after I have the placement figured out. A good portion of the papers will be placed under the circle paper. I realized I pulled too limited of a color palette, so I brought out these teal papers. I think adding these papers will bring a good variety, along with keeping a dark muted look to the collage. Placing the burgundy paper in between the dark blue and teal paper will help to balance the collage in this area. If I kept these two papers together, it may look like one dark bluish green element instead of two separate elements. I like the paper placement in this section, so I'm going to start gluing down the papers. Before I glue the other papers, I'll add a pink accent. I chose to add it to the teal because of its location. Putting the first one in the lower right area gives me a lot of options to place the other pink accents around the collage area. Now it's time to glue the burgundy and the dark blue papers. I feel that the area between the dark blue element and the long teal element is a good place to put another pink accent, just a small, thin shape. To make sure I place this pink accent in the right area, I decided to mark it with a pencil. If I put it too far to the left, the long teal element will cover it. If I put it too far to the right, then there'll be a space between it and the long teal element where the substrate will show through. The burgundy circle element looked a tad bit bulky and squarish, so I decided to tear one edge at a slight angle. I think it's more interesting of a shape. For now, the burgundy circle and the long teal elements will remain unglued. This dark blue plaid paper has a bit of burgundy in this area, so I thought it would tie nicely with the burgundy circle paper. It's a subtle detail that helps the collage to look cohesive. I decided to glue it down now because I want the other elements to be placed slightly on top of it. I love the look of this burgundy wavy paper, so I want to use it again. I want the shape to be at a slight angle. Since the pattern of this section of the paper is angled with the left side up and the right side down, the angle of the torn edge paper is going to be the opposite direction to add an interesting detail. I debated about introducing a new pattern paper because the collage was almost at the point where it's looking too busy. I think this blue and white circle paper will complement the other papers. It's the same value as the blue paper on the bottom half of the substrate. Also, having a vertical orientation adds an interesting detail to this area. The collage needs one more pink accent above the dark blue plaid. The location of the 3 pink accents will help the viewer's eye to move around the collage. And finally, it's time to glue down the burgundy circle and long teal papers. Here's the finished collage. I love how it turned out. Now on to the next one. For this collage, I pulled black and gray papers and lime-colored accent papers. I'm starting by adding 3 large pattern papers. It's a good way to make sure the collage will have a dark look. Again, I'll be creating an all-over composition. I'll be gluing as I go since these papers are large statement elements. I'll be adding smaller and thinner papers on top of and next to each one. All of these black papers were monoprinted. The one with expressive line work was printed on an old book page. The other 2 were monoprinted on 80-pound drawing paper. I'm adding the first lime accent to this area as a way to give some definition to the 2 large black papers. I'm considering this gray paper with black circles as mid-tone. It's time to add a different shape to the collage, so this one will have a vertical orientation. I suggest tearing or cutting paper bigger than you think you need for that area. It's better to have it too big and reduce the size than cut it or tear it too small, speaking from experience. Now it's time to add another lime accent. As with the first collage, I like to space out the accent papers. This helps the viewer's eye to move around the collage. You may have noticed that I fold paper sometimes as a way to mark where I need to cut or tear it. It's a quick and easy way to mark a cut line. I love the look of this black paper, so I want to use it again in this area. It will be big enough to cover part of the 2 papers on either side. I'm thinking the lime paper is a bit too big to be considered an accent, so I'm going to use this gray painted paper to cover some of it. Also, it will trail up the side to connect some of the other elements together. One final lime accent, instead of putting it towards the middle of the collage or placing it horizontally, I thought it'd look better if I put it off to the left side in a vertical orientation. Here's the finished collage. I tend to like simple composition for black and gray collages. It gives a collage a bold look. Let's go on to the final collage. I pulled browns, greens, and teals for the main papers for this collage and bright orange for the accents. In my last video, I created a collage with brown papers and I love the look of it. I'll be adding this color in rotation in my art practice. Also, I pulled more papers than I think I will use because I don't want to stop the session like I did for the first collage. For this collage, I'll be using the cruciform composition, which has been my go-to composition for a while. I won't be painting the ground, so I'll glue down large pieces of this brown and a dark green paper to cover the substrate. Both were made on either the second or third pull while mono printing. Paper doesn't need to have a pattern to make it good for collaging. Variation of colors on each paper is good to have as well. The width of the two papers are slightly different. The cruciform will be off center, so it's good to have the area where the two papers meet be off center as well. I like to use the line where the two papers meet as a guide to build the collage. I'm slightly overlapping the green paper on top of the brown paper. This area may be covered completely when collaging, but in case it isn't, I want to make sure there isn't any of the substrate showing. This green plaid paper is mid-tone. I want the shape to be large enough so there's room to add other smaller papers on top of it. I'll do the same for the other base papers. When using the cruciform composition, I try to avoid putting the same color family on top of or next to each other, meaning I won't put a smaller green paper on top of another green paper. This paper is teal, so that's why I'm adding it on top of the green ground. If I remember correctly, this paper was the second pull because I see some remnants of brown on it. You probably see the text underneath the model printed paper. It's an old book page. Usually old book pages are thinner paper, so you need to be a bit more careful when tearing it into shape. I like to have all four areas of the cruciform slightly off center. I don't want to have an even looking cross shape. I think it's a more interesting composition if it's off center. Like the other teal paper, this one leans more blue than green, which adds contrast to the design. Also, this paper is darker than the other two papers that form the cruciform. I don't want to forget that this collage needs to be mostly dark in value. You probably notice that I'm slightly overlapping where the papers meet in the center. Some of this area will be covered, but some of it may show. It's more interesting to look at overlapping papers than ones that just touch the edge of each other. It may look like I'm going against my rule of not putting the same color next to or on top of each other. I have planned to put a different color between the two browns later. To my eyes, this collage needs another brown element. This paper reads lighter in value since it's white along with brown. Now it's time to add some orange accents in various sizes and shapes. I chose this section of the brown paper because there's some dark green showing. It's another paper that was monoprinted in at least a second pull. There was still some dark green paint still on the gel plate when the brown paint was applied. This dark teal paper is a good accent color for this area since there aren't any other teal elements. I'm adding the last bright orange accent in between the two brown elements to visually separate them. There aren't any green elements in this area, so this green plaid will be a good accent on top of the dark teal and the bright orange. At this stage, the collage needs another dark green element. I'm lifting the paper to make sure I'm tearing it in the right area so it will cover where the underneath papers end. By placing it in the center, it's far enough away from the dark green ground. To balance the collage, it needs another brown element along the dark green paper against the green ground. It only needs to be a thin accent. To finish off the collage, I'm adding a small accent of dark teal on top of the orange and brown elements. Here's the finished collage. I think it's balanced and cohesive while still reading as a dark value collage. Let's have a final wrap up next. Besides the cruciform, I'm drawn to an all-over composition. This collage reads as dark and muted, along with being balanced and cohesive. I think pink was the right accent color for this collage. I'm happy with the way it turned out. Using large amount of black elements will guarantee that the collage will look dark. I like the placement of the lime accents. Happy with this one as well. I think this cruciform collage turned out balanced. There's the right amount of bright orange accents. If I had added one more on this area, I think it would have been too much. Usually I like the look of odd number color elements. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know that my color palette has changed drastically from bright colors to dark and muted. I believe that switching things up, such as the color palette, helps us to grow as artists. I know that I will switch back and forth throughout my art practice. Please let me know if you have any questions. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to watch this video. Take care.